Top that. Friend, I have lost the way.
The way leads on.
Is there another way?
The way is one.
I must retrace the track.
It's lost and gone.
Back, I must travel back.
None goes there, none.
Then I'll make here my place.
The road runs on.
Stand still and set my face.
The road leaps on.
Stay here. Forever stay.
None stays here, none.
I cannot find the way.
The way leads on.
Oh, places I have passed.
That journey is done.
And what will come at last?
The way leads on.
Every night and every morn is our first hymn. It is number 17.
Some to misery are born.
join in the words of our unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So be it. And while you're on your feet, go say hello to somebody you don't know. Introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. Enough of that. Enough, enough, enough. Good morning. Good morning. Once more, good morning. Good morning. It was good old Jalaluddin Rumi who said, "Come, come, whoever you are, come wanderer, come worshiper, come lover of leaving. Come, though you have broken your vow 1,000 times before. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come." Welcome. Welcome, you who have been here a long, long, long time. Welcome to you who are here for the very first time today. There are blue connection cards in the pews, a way of staying in touch with this congregation. We also will have a very brief session in my office over that-a-ways at 11:15 called You, You, and You, a very brief orientation to Unitarian Universalism and to First Parish. If you'd like to chat with us, it will be brief today because we think it is important for Megan and me to both be part of the after-service discussion, which will take place beginning at about 11:30 upstairs in the Bacon Room overlooking the town common. I've suggested to Megan that she spend a good bit of this morning meeting with kids and going to in-gathering to have some conversation about her most recent news. And so I'm going to be stuck here by my lonesome. Yes, there are name tags. If you don't have a name tag, get a name tag. That's actually very hospitable thing to do to help us get to know one another. There are a variety of announcements in the back of your order of service, which I commend to you. And meanwhile, let's go on to a time for all ages with Lisa Rubin.
So Squirrel came to me this morning and said that I have just got to tell that story that has been being passed down through the trees to the squirrels one generation after another. And the name of the story is Still a Tree. Still a tree, still a tree. Still a tree stood by the meeting house on Elm Street side. Still a tree watched as the people dedicated their new meeting house building. And the tree stood through the years watching the people watching men's hats change from broad rims to top hats and straw hats to caps and baseball caps, and watching women's fashions change from hems that touched the ground to hems that climbed up above the calf and the knee, and then sometimes. And watching children as they grew and grew and grew, and sometimes left, sometimes went off to college, went off to adventures, went off to wars, sometimes came back and had children of their own that all stayed here at First Parish. Oh, really? And one time, the teenagers of First Parish, this was quite some time ago, but were doing things out there that the tree could see on the town common that not very many people in the town approved of. Still, a tree watched the people as they celebrated on the common, as they had their plant fairs and apple festivals and ingatherings. And then there was a time when the tree had been so old, she had stood there for so long that still a tree looked like a tree. But inside, the tree was not doing very well. And the people helped by removing the tree from the Elm Street side of the meeting house. Still, a piece of the tree was put downstairs and displayed on the wall so that all could see the many, many rings on the tree and see how many years and years and years it watched over the people of First Parish and all of the different things that happened in the history of the town and the country, all while the tree stood still. Still, there's another tree, a tree where people sit under its shade, a tree where squirrels scamper up the trunk and the branches, a tree where children climb, a tree that watches as the people of First Parish grow, change, come, leave. It watches the transitions at First Parish, and it stands guard. And now you have the story of Still a Tree, and you can do with it as you like. Thank you for sharing your story.
Kids and teachers are going to go off to their ingathering, and as they do, we can stay seated and let's see if we can sing the sanctuary song.
Prepare me to Good morning, I'm Nancy Doherty from the Lay Pastoral Care Team, and I'd like to invite you up to light a candle of joy or concern to share with the congregation. And after the service, I'll stand by the candle stand if you'd like to light one privately.
So, many of you received a letter this week in which Megan announced her resignation, effective at the end of December of this calendar year, after serving nearly 9 years in the ministry here. And so we have lit a candle, and this candle is known as a preemptive candle. Our hearts are very full, and this candle is lighted on all our behalf. We will have many opportunities to share our feelings and give Megan the very best possible farewell. And I'm aware that we have many, many mixed and jumbled feelings. But eventually, let's do our very best to make this about Megan. Let's do our very best to celebrate and honor her ministry, past and present and future. If you did not receive Megan's letter, there are additional copies of it in the common room on top of the piano.
Well, I think this decision was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. And I lit 2 candles because I think the joy and the sorrow are woven so fine. And my fondness for all of you and who we are together and our shared ministry couldn't be improved upon. And I am not leaving because I am unhappy, or because I don't love you, or because John and I had some big mean fight, or because I wish my role here were different. My reason for leaving is personal, in the sense that I would like to become a mother and have a family. And I turned 40 in the spring, and I felt like the time is now. I need to do this next thing. And I do not want to leave, but I also feel that in my leaving and embracing a next chapter, I hope that will be good personally, but I also hope that this will be a positive time of transition for this congregation also, that there can be new things in the space that I leave, for new discoveries and perhaps a new person in that role, or ways forward that we can't yet envision, but that we might. And I won't go till after Christmas, so we have much time to tell each other how we feel. And for good goodbyes, because so often in our lives we've had painful and sad goodbyes for difficult reasons. And in a way, this is a good goodbye for good reasons. Because the truth is that I love you, and I'll miss you, and the love is for keeps.
I'll light one last one for those joys and concerns we hold silently in our hearts.
This is called the fear of transformation. Sometimes I feel that my life is a series of trapeze swings. I'm either hanging onto a trapeze bar swinging along, or for a few moments in my life, I'm hurtling across space in between trapeze bars. Most of the time, I spend my life hanging on for dear life to my trapeze bar of the moment. It carries me along a certain steady rate of swing, and I have the feeling that I'm in control of my life. I know most of the right questions and even some of the right answers. But once in a while, as I'm merrily or not so merrily swinging along, I look ahead of me into the distance, and what do I see? I see another trapeze bar swinging toward me. It's empty, and I know in that place that knows that this new trapeze bar has my name on it. It is my next step, my growth, my aliveness going to get me. In my heart of hearts, I know that for me to grow, I must release my grip on the present, well-known bar to move on to the new one. Each time it happens to me, I hope, no, I pray that I won't have to grab the new one. But in my knowing place, I know that I must totally release my grasp on my old bar and for some moment in time hurtle across space before I can grab onto the new bar. Each time I am filled with terror. It doesn't matter that in all my previous hurdles across the void of unknowing, I have always made it. Each time I am afraid I will miss, that I will be crushed on the unseen rocks in the bottomless chasm between the bars. But I do it anyway. Perhaps this is the essence of what the mystics call the faith experience. No guarantees, no net, no insurance policy, but you do it anyway because somehow to keep hanging onto that old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. And so, for an eternity that can last a microsecond or 1,000 lifetimes, I soar across the dark void of the past is gone, the future is not yet here. It's called transition. I have come to believe that it is the only place that real change occurs. I mean real change, not the pseudo change that only lasts until the next time my old buttons get punched. I have noticed that in our culture, this transition zone is looked upon as a no thing, no place between places. Sure, the old trapeze bar was real, and that new one coming towards me, I hope that's real too, but the void in between, that's just a scary, confusing, disorienting nowhere that must be gotten through as fast, as unconsciously as possible. What a waste. I have a sneaking suspicion that the transition zone is the only real thing. And the bars are illusions we dream up to avoid where the real change, the real growth occurs for us. Whether or not my hunch is true, it remains that the transition zones in our lives are incredibly rich places. They should be honored, even savored. Yes, with all the pain and fear and feelings of being out of control that can, but not necessarily accompany transitions, they are still the most alive, most growth-filled, passionate, expansive moments in our lives. And so, transformation of fear may have nothing to do with making fear go away, but rather with giving ourselves permission to hang out in the transition between trapeze bars. Transforming our need to grab that new bar, any bar, is allowing ourselves to dwell in the only place where change really happens. It can be terrifying. It can also be enlightening in the true sense of the word. Hurtling through the void, We just may learn how to fly. Freely we have received. For the good work of this good congregation within and far, far beyond these walls, our offering will now gratefully be received. People sometimes wonder why there are so many Kleenex boxes in our pews. Now you know. Well, as I said, enough about Megan. Instead, let's talk about us. More specifically, let's talk about me. I've actually been thinking about a version of this sermon for a while, long before Megan came up with her evil plan. You see, I turned 65 over the summer, and it's just a number, but it's a number with some cultural baggage. My body is creakier and lumpier. Sometimes I need to sit down or hold on to something to get my socks or my underwear on without falling over. My wife will tell you that my memory is shot. Now, I must also be quick to say how incredibly fortunate I am to be 65 when so many have been so unfairly denied that privilege due to violence and illness and caprice. And I also must be quick to say that there are those in this room, those in their 80s or 90s or hundreds, who scoff at any 65-year-old whining. You want to feel old, they ask? I'll show you old. And they do, with grace and meaning and purpose. Nonetheless, every birthday, every trip around the sun, every sunset and sunrise, every letter of resignation is occasion to reflect on the central feature of our very existence, which is our mortality. Memento mori, counseled the Stoics. To remember that we shall die is not to be gloomy or morbid, but to be woke. Awaken. Wake up. A couple of weeks ago out there on the Common, I pontificated that the central purpose of religious community is to keep afire the spark of wonder. Exhibit A, remember, was Sarah, the flying Hawaiian hoop dancer. And wonder is but the other side of the coin of mortality. We experience wonder because we are temporal beings, and our grasp on everything is temporary. At the top of your order of service, it says, "Time passes swiftly and opportunity is lost." Once I preached a sermon titled, "Religion is for Losers," in which I said that every rite of passage is really about coping with loss. A child dedication, and there will be a child dedication right here in another couple of hours. That is a happy occasion, but it's really about parents giving up their exclusive and obsessive grasp of their child, loosening their grip, because it takes a village to raise a child. Coming of age recognizes a loss of childhood innocence. Marriage celebrates the loss of "I can do whatever I want" autonomy. And then we lose our lives, and even that is not the end, for we still get to push up the daisies. Religion, said my colleague Forrest Church, is the human response to being alive and having to die. Forrest died at age 61. Let's hope that Sarah, the flying Hawaiian, lives so long and doesn't fall off her coconut tree. And so, yes, this morning we're feeling not a death, but a very real loss. And I do feel just a bit older. And so I want to share a few teaching stories about loss and transition. That trapeze story was one. Somehow to keep hanging on to that old bar is no longer on the list of alternatives. The past is gone, the future is not yet here. I try to keep multiple copies of one book in my office, and it's called Transitions by a man aptly named William Bridges. If there is a universal cause of human anxiety, it is loss, endings, transitions. We attach and cling to the last trapeze bar. Buddhism and Bridges too counsel non-attachment, letting go. As I said in my postscript to Megan's letter of resignation, every new beginning must begin with an ending. Megan's resignation is an ending, and in time it will lead to a new beginning for her and for us. The Transitions book by the man named Bridges is all about that space between the trapeze bars, which is where we are now, and where Megan too is now. The thin air where we are is a tender, generative, hopeful, and spine-tingling space. The story said, "Hurtling through the void, we just may learn how to fly." Yeah, right. Oh, joy. Here's another story about change. Itzhak Perlman is one of the great virtuoso violinists of our time. Stricken with polio as a child, he wears large braces on both legs and maneuvers with the aid of 2 crutches. Seeing him take the stage is an inspiring sight. Painfully and slowly, but majestically and confidently, he makes his way to his chair. Then he carefully lowers himself into his chair, places his crutches on the floor, unfastens the braces on his legs, and tucks one foot back and extends the other foot forward. He then bends down and picks up his violin, arranges it under his chin, and then nods to the conductor. It's a ritual that his audiences have come to respect and admire. At a concert at Lincoln Center's Avery Fisher Hall in November 1995, the audience saw what a master musician Perlman is. After playing just the first few bars of the opening piece, one of the strings on his violin broke. Everyone in the hall could hear it snap. It sounded like a blast of gunfire. Both musicians and audience members expected the concert to stop and wait for Perlman to put his braces back on, take up his crutches, and make his way backstage to restring the instrument or find a replacement. But Perlman didn't. Instead, he waited a moment, closed his eyes, and then signaled the conductor to begin again, and Perlman picked up the piece from the point where he had left off. Itzhak Perlman then proceeded to do the impossible. He played a symphonic work with just 3 strings. Audience and orchestra watched and listened in amazement as Perlman modulated, transposed, and recomposed the piece in his head. At one point, it sounded like he was detuning the strings to get new sounds from them that they had never made before. When he finished, there was an awesome silence in the room, and then a thunderous ovation roared from every corner of the great hall. Perlman smiled, wiped the sweat from his brow, raised his bow to quiet the audience, and then he said, not boastfully, but in a quiet, pensive, reverent tone, "You know, Sometimes it is the artist's task to find out how much music you can still make with what you have left. So how might this story be relevant to us? Old age and treachery will always beat youth and exuberance. For a long time, First Parish has been playing on all our strings, and now one has busted loose. With what we have left, we still can make music. But let me interject a bit about what will happen here. First of all, like many of you, I am really sad. I don't know why I thought our partnership with Megan might last forever, but I did. Illusion. I feel this loss deeply, and while, yes, I'll come around and I'll love Megan forever, and together with you we'll celebrate her ministry, past, present, and future, and eventually everything will be copacetic, but this also does hurt. My emotions are a jumble, and it is okay if yours are also. And yes, over the next few months, we will have ample opportunities to say goodbye, vent if necessary, grieve, and give Megan our very best farewell. She'll finish at the end of December and will demand at least one more cartwheel. With our board, we will be looking for an interim minister. The configuration of responsibilities, TBD. I expect we will know who that may be later this fall, but we may be assured there are no Megan Lineses growing on trees around here. Trees? Maybe coconut trees. I wonder what Sarah, the flying Hawaiian, is doing. Our next minister will not be Megan or Sarah, but I promise there are rabbits to be pulled out of this old hat. Yes, we'll be shopping around for some new strings, but we will make music with what we have left. And again, this isn't just about Megan and her evil plan. This is about all of us. This is about life. And so here is another teaching story. Once someone asked a well-known Thai meditation master, in this world where everything changes, where nothing remains the same, where loss and grief are inherent in our very coming into existence, how can there be any happiness? How can we find security when we see that we can't count on anything being the way we want it to be? The teacher, looking compassionately at this fellow, held up a drinking glass that had been given to him earlier in the morning and said, "You see this goblet? For me, this glass is already broken. I enjoy it, I drink out of it, it holds my water admirably, sometimes even reflecting the sun in beautiful patterns. If I should tap it, it has a lovely ring to it. But when I put this glass on a shelf and the wind knocks it over, or my elbow brushes it off the table and it falls to the ground and shatters, I say, of course. When I understand that this glass is already broken, every moment with it is precious. Every moment is just as it is, and nothing need be otherwise. And you know, wouldn't you know that in this morning's Boston Globe, there was an obituary for a woman named Sonia Neves, who died at age 90, and she founded the Gestalt Center in Wellfleet. And these are the first couple of paragraphs of her obituary. When a course of therapy with psychologist Dr. Sonia Neves ended and a client struggled with goodbye, she would ask her patient to pick up one of the many glass figurines in her office, a little glass horse perhaps, or a cat. Then she would tell her client to break it. They are often surprised and may physically pull back. They will sometimes say, "Don't you care about it?" I might answer, "Yes, very much." They will say, "So why do you want me to break it?" I'll say, "Because the sensation of loss is one that most of us avoid, even though it is so ordinary. We all have to learn to experience it in the moment. And if we are lucky, we can do it with one another." If our only spiritual practice were to live with an awareness that all things are temporary, what time would there be for old games or falsehoods or posturing? Only love would be appropriate, only the truth. Sometimes, I end our services with the benediction, "Let us agree in love, for if we agree in love, there is no injury that can do us any harm, and yet if we do not agree in love, there is no other agreement that will do us any good." Megan has made decisions with love as her goal. She has sought and spoken the truth to us in love. Over the next few months, but really over all our lives, with whatever time we may have, may we be so fearless, so ready to let go, so loving. But I want to go back to that playing with three strings story and Itzhak Perlman, who, after the string broke, modulated, transposed, and recomposed the piece in his head. Now, who are we kidding? I'm not Itzhak Perlman, and friends, neither are you. We may be able to make music with what we have left, but virtuoso? I don't think so. And so I want to leave you with one final example of what human beings can do with their finite gift of time. And this example is something called the really terrible orchestra, also called RTO. A British amateur orchestra founded in 1995 by the Edinburgh-based businessman Peter Stevenson and the author Alexander McCall Smith. I really don't make this stuff up. You can go to the internet and find all kinds of stuff about the really terrible orchestra. There are YouTubes. Go check it out. The inspiration for Stevenson and Smith was the enjoyment that their children were having in their school orchestras. And so they decided to look for a local amateur orchestra with which they could enjoy playing music just for the fun of it. And they could not find such an orchestra, and thus they formed the RTO as a result, with Richard Neville Towell as its conductor. The orchestra's website describes its mission as follows. The Really Terrible Orchestra exists to encourage those who have been prevented from playing music, either through lack of talent or some other factor, to play music in the company of similarly afflicted players. The policy of the orchestra is to make no distinction between the various grades of ability and the various forms of music or time signature. The RTO looks forward to a further lowering of standards in order to underline its commitment to accessibility and relevance. Smith has expressed the low quality of the orchestra's playing very directly. The name, he says, was very carefully chosen. What it said was what you would get. In light of Megan's lamentable decision, you see, I'm really trying. That's a step up from her evil plan. In light of her lamentable decision, and now that we have that high-quality bicentennial celebration behind us, I propose that the First Parish in Bedford commit to a further lowering of our standards in order to underline our commitment to accessibility and relevance. We've spent altogether too much time to move from being a good to being a great church. And henceforth, we have a golden opportunity to be a really terrible church, also known as RTC, which is to say that we are not attached to any trapeze bar. We are not reliant on any single fragile, breakable string or crystal goblet or minister, but rather we shall be an amateur congregation. Amateur, remember, motivated solely by love. Gathered solely for the purpose of delighting in the making of joy and meaning in this oh so temporal world, and to encourage those who have been prevented from doing so, either through lack of talent or some other factor, to do so in the precious company of other similarly afflicted congregants. Let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes swiftly and opportunity is lost. Each of us should strive to awaken. Take heed. Do not squander your life. Godspeed, Megan, and Godspeed to us all. We'll sing, of course, Forward Through the Ages. It is number 114.
Forward
turn, if you would please, to number 670 at the back of our hymnal, The Way by Edwin Muir, and we will read this responsively.
Friend, I have lost the way.
The way leads on.
Is there another way?
The way is one.
I must retrace the track.
It's lost and gone.
Back, I must travel back.
None goes there, none.
Then I'll make here my place.
The road runs on.
Stand still and set my face.
The road leaps on.
Stay here, forever stay.
None stays here, none.
I cannot find the way.
The way leads on.
Oh, places I have passed.
That journey is done.
And what will come at last?
The way leads on.